Hello and welcome to Ignore All Previous Instructions. It's Pam Selle, and this week I have Helen on. Helen, would you please introduce yourself and share who you are in this space?
Hi, Pam. I'm Helen Horstmann-Allen. In this space, let's just say I'm a radical optimist. I have
Are you
a
the rare breed?
Yes, I have a wide range of interests, which someone recently told me I should call a portfolio career. So I would say my
Mm-hmm.
portfolio career is really focused around women, money, and power, with a heavy side dose of Philadelphia, the greatest city in the world.
Philadelphia, the greatest city. Um, and if you don't agree, it somehow makes it Philadelphia entrenched even harder.
That's
That's
correct.
it's truly a quicksand that right there. And um and you also were involved in, this little email company that, you know.
Yep, I spent 28 years in email. I was talking to somebody earlier today about their email, and I am grateful not to have that conversation every day. But she was like, "Why are these things so hard?" And I said, "Welcome to the federated
Emails
universe. Email
hard.
works, calendar works, contacts work, and also they each have their own challenges."
Yes. So, but as an important tech infrastructure, so it's
Absolutely critical, and I wish many more things were federated.
hmm hmm well, what do you think of some of the trends in Fediversing? And I mean, there's arguments about like that, like, so Blue Sky is ostensibly decentralized, or, but it's not really. It's kind of, but not really. Like, and from a technical perspective, it's not actually decentralized. And Christine of Sprightly has a whole article about that. But I feel like that's like one of the biggest names in decentralized social
Yeah,
media, at least.
for sure. And I think, when I think about, like one of my real passions is like product development and the product side. And, it is challenging to build decentralized federated products that have all those little edges shaved off that people
Mm-hmm.
expect. And so I do understand why consumers often make the choice away from um, federated products. And I will say, I, like many people, was a pretty heavy Twitter user in the day, and I
Mm-hmm.
have been on Mastodon for several years now. And also, like in the last 3 months, Blue Sky has given me back many of the things that I used to get from Twitter that never really showed up on Mastodon. Um,
Yeah, which I think I would say, I feel like its dash of centralization is kind of what allows that. And they've done
Absolutely.
also just, I mean, that team, their technical skill is quite frankly amazing. They're wonderful people. Like, I've met some of them and they're just, they're great folks.
That's
So
awesome. And yeah, I wish I knew more about them. But yeah, like that, as you say, that dash of centralization really does provide something critical from the user side. Um,
mhm.
so, it's like a double-edged sword, and like, always a challenge for us in the federated space to be upping our game and really focusing on the user experience, because that is the secret sauce in a lot of ways.
I have a thought that I want to bounce off of you that I wonder about, because in online spaces, so I'm thinking about, the online world and its contrast with the physical world of that, you know, in because I think about this in my neighborhoods, or, just in general. When in doubt, I will always choose a independent business or something not part of a chain, or if it's part of a chain and maybe it's a local chain. And, the difference between Starbucks to La Colombe to, corner coffee shop
Yeah,
person.
totally.
And so in that world, so La Colombe being a local chain of sorts in Philadelphia that also, I mean, at this point they distribute nationally. So
Yeah.
they're,
Well,
I
at this
mean,
point, they've been acquired by Chobani.
oh, I forgot that they're now yogurt.
That's why you can always get a
What?
yogurt at La Colombe.
So thinking about online spaces is that there's no real like forcing function in terms of keeping things separate. Is that, if I prefer to go to, except for, I guess, regulation and, some services online are not accessible in certain geo zones, which you can cheat and use a VPN and pretend to be in Poland or whatever. So I don't know. Did you have any thoughts around that of like, how businesses get big? Because I think this is also like this, like the centralization and, the like, it actually on Eagles Christmas, aka, the Eagles parade day, I overheard I was getting, in line to get coffee at Rival Brothers to just, plug city for various coffee shops in Philadelphia. And overheard some teenagers being like, I just wish there was like a Starbucks here. And I was just like, we have such different values, you and young teens.
Yep.
But
Feel that.
But just like the like attraction of like, I just want this thing where I know what I'm getting. Like, I know what I'm going to walk in and get out of this situation.
It certainly is interesting. And, like if you kind of take a step back, I mean, Starbucks is delivering something that people want, even though it's not necessarily something I want.
Sure. And that's and preferences, and some people, I don't know, that's choices, people make them.
Yes, for sure. And also I am interested in kind of what you said about how online there's fewer of those signals sometimes, right? Like that's frankly how I got my start, right? In 1995. You could build a website that was just as good as the one, major corporations were building because they hadn't hired any, 17-year-olds yet.
Yeah, people who knew who had the time and energy and who got really into how to,
exactly
do the internet.
But and then also it's like, what are you hoping to get out of the experience? And like I will be the first person to admit, like I have never been someone who makes a lot of online friends, right? I feel like I am very heavily grounded in the real world. I like to be out and about. I like to meet people in person.
This perhaps a strength and leads to your radical optimism. I've made a lot of friends online. I've made a friend where I went and stayed at his house and realized when I got there that we had never met in person, that I'm pretty sure we never met in person, and that we were just friends that became friends on Twitter. And I was like, I'm going to Texas. Can we, hang? And wonderful friend, still a great friend. But I was like, what choices have I made? Well, I used to do couch surfing. Like I used to, travel the world, staying on people's couches. People would come, crash with me.
And I have lots of friends who have made lots of friends online. And it's not to say that like online friends are not real friends.
People make choices.
People make choices, but that's just like my own preference, right? Like when I meet people online, it's always like, well, who are they really? And when you meet people in real life, you can do an immediate vibe check, I guess. And also I would say like I am like normie to my core. So it's easy for me to meet people in the real world who like I feel like I connect with, right? There's the true like beauty of the internet was when you could find other people who had your super niche interest and be like, yeah, other people love this besides me. I feel like my most niche interest is I did start a book club once that was feminist sci-fi book club for people who hated sci-fi. It was like a super outreach effort because I was like, I'm going to convince you there's lots of great sci-fi. It's not all space opera and like, right? There's lots of great feminist sci-fi out there. Let me introduce you to it.
It's a whole category. I have a friend who we used to have or I guess we still have them, but I just don't go as much. But alumni weeks for this program that we did, and she would give a talk every year on feminist sci-fi. And it was pretty much like, honestly, going to her session was just like, I just want the list.
Right. Just give me the book list.
And the list, but the presentation is good because it's all the the context of like why you might like this one, what was interesting about it, and so. But there's turns out when people imagine worlds, it can be a very it can be a very positive experience, like versus dystopian. It's like, how do you imagine worlds and imagine futures?
Absolutely, and like I like. Right. I like that. I like the idea of getting to explore new things. And and I have read a lot of dystopian fiction. I'm not going to say I only read upbeat books.
Sure.
I have a huge appetite for terrible things, but only in the written form. Please don't ever show me a movie or a video or a TV show about it. And also, there's so much of what I'll call modern literature that is just about like how awful people are. And it's like, I got no time for that. Like, there's enough awfulness in the real world. I don't need to read about like real life people who treat their families really badly and have no real connect. Like, it just versus in dystopian fiction, actually, the message almost always is there is hope in humanity.
It usually is, actually. It's the dystopian fiction tends to be the everything is terrible, but we still care about each other. That's a very common theme.
Exactly.
You know, because it would be kind of the book would end pretty quickly. It was like, and then I was in trouble and no one helped me.
Right. The end. Page 4.
The end. And then I died in a gutter. And, you know, 10 pages long. So, that was just a thought I was having. I was like, online spaces, online geographies is sometimes like a word that I've like thought about using for this, and the, of like, is a decentralized internet also, there's all these beautiful protocols of the Fediverse and like how we can all like connect the systems together, but also I was thinking like it's not like a technical use of when people say decentralized, this is not necessarily what they mean. But if me and my bespoke group of friends, spin up a server that has a little forum, that's not attached to that, that's, choosing to run on our own infrastructure choices. Or, there was a system that some friends made that was this is one of my this is way deep, this is like in the dust on my idea plateau, but in terms of it's like it's been there for a long time and I don't know this ever coming off, but it's it was a RSS reader, or like a kind of like Google Reader but just RSS feeds of your friends. And so it was like, and like this bespoke group of friends, like friends at MIT, and like then we like joined each other's thing. And it was with the particular goal of people who wanted to write every week on their blog. And so there was kind of a nudge mechanism too of it, of, like, oh, here's like, everyone in the, the blog circle who's like agreed that they want to write every week on their blog. And so there was, but it just, ran on its own thing, had its own whole situation, not embedded in Google Reader. And now no one reads blogs, air quotes. And or I know I get really demotivated excuse me, writing on the internet, because at least my tech blog is A, constantly attacked, and B, I think it's also constantly attacked because it's constantly crawled, because I have technical articles, and so my content is stolen and repopulated all over the internet, and it's super sucks. And there's really not anything I can do about it, and it just kind of sucks, because it's just people, training their LLM or whatever, or just straight up stealing my articles. Every few months, someone will be like, "Hey, someone stole your article over here," and I'm like, there's truly nothing I can do about it, except that on my most popular article, I did recently add a line in there that says, if you read this on a website that is not, this website is stolen, and you should stop supporting stolen content.
I like that.
If it ends up somewhere that is like, it is bad and you should feel bad. That is, what are you doing?
Yes, what are you doing? Come on, people. Like, but
that puts too much. Yeah, that puts too much pressure on the individual person. Like, it's not their fault that that's just what came up in their Google search, or their DuckDuckGo search and whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not gonna get on my old curmudgeonly high horse, but like many old timers on the internet, I'm like, man, Google Reader and RSS feeds and being able to curate. I mean, it was the greatest.
That was a decentralized thing, but then we all use this centralized product to consume it.
Yeah,
which and then it's the
And
whole
it provided
ecosystem.
real value to be able to
It
chat only
did.
with your friends about what you thought about that article, but also, yeah. But I think a lot about like this topic of like the center of gravity. Like, how do you know
Mm,
something is happening? Like, there needs to be kind of a center of gravity. And the internet is really interesting in that because, right, a million communities exist in every little space. And
mm,
how do you know? Like, how do you know which one you want to be part of? Like, what's the vibe there? There's fewer signaling
mm,
mechanisms than there are in the real world. And also, even in the real world, this is like a huge problem right now. Like the death of traditional journalism is
mm.
really that this is one of the kind of really negative outcomes, right? Things are happening, and how do you know? And I have this like semi nerdy project that I
You
keep.
follow someone on a centralized media platform, and then they eventually sell you supplements, Helen. Obviously,
I
that's
know.
and
But
that's from point
so
A to point C.
I'm thinking about this all the time, and I keep trying to convince people to set up a podcasting studio in physical storefronts in Philadelphia so that there can just be like a board that's like recording this week, and you can just like mostly to expose the fact that this podcast on this topic exists. And if that's interesting to you, like you can follow along because I want people in Philadelphia to know about what other cool people in Philadelphia are doing. And I live right off South Street. And I was like, ooh, what would be the best podcast to record right on South Street so that all the people walking down South Street would
I'm
know
so
about it?
tempted by South Street storefronts have tempted me because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's that stretch always has stuff, but always kind of needs something.
It surely does. It surely does. But yeah, so like, how do you find community? I mean, that's one of the big challenges, right? Like, how do you get to the thing, especially now because like search seems like it's getting worse and worse and worse.
Because the investment in LLMs and AI and it's
Has to be proven out, and we're better to prove it out than making all your search results garbage.
mm-hmm. Have you seen I am fond of AI tar pits?
No, tell
So
me more.
there's multiple of them that people have now written as like software packages so that if you want, you can, maybe I should think about, I wonder if I could install a tar pit on my website. Um, but
I
it's,
hear it's very popular to be crawled.
yeah, it's actually like, oh, the problem is that when you put a tar pit on your website, you can like, by nature of crashing the AI agent and wasting its time, you can also crash your own website.
Yeah.
So, but it's a just a lot of garbage text that looks like it's English and readable, but it all just kind of doesn't make any sense and has lots of links to other things. And so as it crawls, like it gets stuck and stuck and stuck and stuck. So it's an AI tar pit to try to catch the crawlers and waste their compute and like load them with garbage data. And so it's a small to medium resistance tactic because it's all these software packages also have big warnings of like, this is malicious software. Like it's straight
Right.
up. I mean, there's not there, like let's be being honest about what we're doing and not, like if you choose to put this on your website, you are doing this on purpose to, try and set this trap and not, oh no, I just simply decided to do it that way. But so that's also why I haven't done it because it's, there are sometimes consequences to things. But
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Well, and like I think, yes, I think we all have to choose our path of actions, and obviously
Sure.
mine is definitely pro-social, and also
So
if yours
you're a
is
very social animal.
right. Well, and if yours are antisocial, it's like, well, I'm not going to be like, that's a great thing to do. But also, like, there are legitimate reasons for some kinds of antisocial behavior.
Mm.
I just read a book recently called We Refuse. And
Oh.
I I had the subtitle, I would tell you, but I don't have it. But it was like, what does activism look like if you are a Black woman in particular, and how has it shown up through history? And it's not all like, taking a seat on the bus. So
cool. It would like, when was it written? Or
last year.
Okay, so this is a contemporary book.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting. And yes, so I was pondering a segueing from sometimes there are consequences to, it made me think about some of the things I know we also interacted in an investing circle, or an educational investing circle, and one of the things that is I'm like many people, I'm a reader of Matt Levine's Bloomberg column, and that there's basically no SEC for the next 4 years. It's
exciting times.
It's playing fast and loose in financial markets. So, but yeah, I wanted to see if you wanted we could chat a little bit about, what's going on in the world of investing, or in, interest in investing. I know you're interested in getting women in investing.
Yes. So one of my big passions is inviting women to learn more about their investor persona. Like, I think, especially if you are an American listening to this and you intend to retire in America today, you are already an investor, and it is only a question of like how much you feel like you own that identity. And women in particular, I think, do need an extra invitation to the table. And so I got involved with this group just kind of on a lark, just to see what was going on. But it turned out to be really fascinating that if you invite women to come and talk about how you can align your money with your values, that's something that really resonates. And it turns out there's a lot more out there than most people think. I think a lot of people hear like money and values, and they think, oh, I'll put money in an ESG fund maybe, or maybe they think I have to be an angel investor. But right, or maybe they don't think about anything, right? Or maybe they think about only charitable giving. And and there's actually a really broad spectrum, right? If you have ever engaged in intentional purchasing, like buying your coffee at the local coffee shop, you are already thinking about aligning your money with your values. If you've ever participated in an economic boycott, you are already started thinking about aligning your money with your values. Money is something we interact with every single day. But more than that, it's like, well, who do you have these conversations with, right? Like, sometimes you might talk about where you buy your coffee, or participating in an economic boycott, but you probably aren't talking to a lot of your friends about where you're putting your retirement money, whether it matters where you bank, questions like that. And all that stuff can just feel like overwhelming and time consuming to even think about, much less research and take action on. So I have really enjoyed having these groups, because the women who show up, it's a little bit of a provocative invitation. And if you show up, you're probably someone who I want to get to know better. So
it's a good signaling function.
Yeah. And like, I also think, as with so many things in this world, there's this idea that like I've fallen behind, right? Everybody else in the world is further ahead than I am. And even at the very first circle I joined, I joked to everyone that I felt like I was the only civilian in the room, that everyone else there worked with money professionally, right? Like, either they were worked in finance, or they worked.
True of your circle?
Yeah, they worked in investing, they worked in philanthropy, they worked in nonprofits, but everybody's job had a money job.
Close to money. Okay.
Right. And like running a business, you're close to money too, but not in that same way. Not that I spent every day looking at dollars and cents. And almost universally, what those women said was, I think about this every day, and I don't do it for myself. Right. And so
the cobbler's children. Yeah,
that's right. Even women who professionally spent a lot of time thinking about it didn't necessarily apply that to their own behavior and also made themselves feel bad about it. Right. And so it, I think, is really empowering on any spectrum to know that you are not alone in the experience you're going through, and to have a supportive community. And somebody asked me, like why in particular. And I said, there's lots of reasons and I can tell you lots of reasons why, but like, let me give you a for real one. One of the things I realized in this was that it did matter where I banked, and I would like to move money away from my traditional bank that had somewhat predatory practices and move it into a credit union. And also, this is a project that like takes a bunch of time and has a bunch of hassles, and it's really easy to postpone. And there are not that many people in the world who are going to like cheer you on for moving your bank. But if you join one of these circles, you will have people who will cheer you on.
That is a really notable feature of it, is that, adulting task that is just purely like, you can very simply not, and you can leave it alone and let it sit there. But it's also, these are choices. That is, oh, my money is always doing something. What do I want it to be doing?
Uh-huh. That's right. So yeah. And if that's something that feels better with more support, like I am very in person and run in-person circles in Philadelphia. And also the group that I do it with, Invest for Better, runs circles all over the country, and lots of them are virtual. So if leaving the house is not in the cards for you because there's nobody within 100 miles, you can still get the community online. Yeah. But yeah, but Pam, I was really nervous like recruiting you into a circle because you know a lot about investing. And so I guess I would love to hear like what you got out of it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, what I got out of it was finding what there's in 6 sessions, and that there is still, like, I knew there's still so much that I don't know because I dabbled in, finance for many years and managed my own money. But at the same time that I was like, oh, this is the layers of research and were very helpful in that I both didn't know, in particular, to do values research was really interesting. And the getting over the hump of the first time doing research, the dauntingness of what do I look at, but then actually, kind of being in the group and having it as homework of doing this task really helped. And it helped demystify it in terms of, oh, I can do this research. It's not that bad. It's a thing I'm capable of doing. In terms of, looking at things beyond the stuff that's on the finance page of looking at. And I mean, finance is a strange place right now. The public markets are really volatile, and they are and they aren't. They're volatile on a daily basis, and there's a lot of panicking, and then they'll volatile the other direction. And so the core things don't necessarily change. One of my favorite, so when I did, studied, some investing in college, and then it kind of led to the thing I found is called If You Can, and it was written by an investment person, and it was targeted toward millennials, so which, at the time when I was younger, and now we're older, for time happens to all of us. And it's a very short book, and it's pretty much, if you have some money, make it do stuff. And if you don't have much money, save some of it. And this money that you save, some of it, it's a very simple portfolio theory strategy. And that's pretty much what I've been doing. But without, without necessarily looking at, but if I do some ETFs, what's in this package of ETFs? And who are the companies in there, and do I like what they're doing? Is it what I want to support? And this is what I really liked about Invest for Better, is it gave me an orientation which helped me with motivation.
Mm-hmm.
of like the same way that I can, I sound and share that I'm very motivated about independent businesses and care about like, especially in Philadelphia, one of my, nightmares is that, and I see it starting to happen downtown, is that there's lots of national chains, and that I don't want downtown Philadelphia to feel like a suburban strip mall. That's because that's what it feels like. The it's many players, like it's the real estate developers and what the prices they're charging for rent, the companies with capital to pay that rent, or capital
Yep.
to have a retail business at all, and having to have like wanting to have a physical presence. Why downtown? There's so many factors that I understand as not, and each individual is not making a purposely evil choice, or they don't think so, and or they may just care about things because they just like Starbucks. That framing investing around the that giving, because I think of investing that it's my money working, my money should make money, my money works for me, and that apply that now I also have done kind of well enough that I can allow myself some room to play around in terms of that. Okay, like this company is making money, but how are they making that money? Perhaps I want to think about that. And which I
Yeah.
think is
And
something I'm still rolling around in my head around, like, is investing bad in general? Like, is like capital markets are fraught because it's capitalism. And so it's, there's a natural fraughtness to it.
yeah, for sure. And, like I do think it's one of the things, kind of coming back to the research piece, that always shocks people is I think people have like in their head, they are aware that, you might not want to invest in fossil fuel companies. Like that's a pretty
Sure.
popular
That's a pretty
notion.
divestment strategy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one that really kills people is they start doing research on the funds they own, and they're like, oh, every single fund I own is getting an F on private prisons, right? Like
Yes,
that
that's a common
is
one.
something I don't want to put my money behind. So yes, just even opening up the lens of like, what is values alignment? And it's more than just, fossil fuels. But the idea that, right, why do we have money? Why do we invest it? Is it working for us? I mean, I think that that's really useful. And I also talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and they do often need money. And also, taking money from an investor is a long-term relationship. And I
Mm.
think on both sides, it's worth thinking about what that is, right? And like, would I take money from you, Pam, if I needed an investment? Probably I would, because I think we're aligned in a lot of things. And I wouldn't feel concerned that you were going to say to me, Helen, why don't you put that money in a private prison? I'm pretty sure that's going to get me the best return for my
Mm-hmm.
dollars, right? And also that's in many ways the conversation, right? You want an investor who's aligned with you and your business goals. And, one of the hardest things in the world is to work out the terms of an investment and then realize that you're not a fit and that you should walk away from that money.
Mm. That the money costs too much.
The money costs too much, more than just
Mm.
the financial terms, because there is always a relationship with money, right? And I think there was a whole show about it. It was called The Gilmore Girls, and it was all
How the relationship between money and family and
uh-huh.
that's,
Right. What does that mean?
and so I also want to, so in terms of private prisons actually being a decent example, and I will admit the fact that my information is likely out of date, but as far as that topic goes, something that's I find interesting is that this investing and investment activism is a thing that works. That's that's a thing that I learned some years ago on the banking side, is that coalitions of banks started, working together, and they're making decisions from both ethics and also, like because I think it's okay, radical idea in today's world. I think it's okay to make decisions based on ethics. And, but that the idea that, perhaps this isn't actually, it might look like it is a good monetary, a investment strategy, but in the long run. And that's where some of the, values investing. But about the banks and private prisons is that many banks and coalitions of banks stopped funding private prisons years ago, to the point that when a private prison is like, I need capital and I need to go get it, banks don't work with them, but many banks. And so that's a cool thing in that it works. And so that's an old story. Let's talk about a recent story, is that there's a lot of flux in the Tesla stock. And some of the flux also, there's institutional investors, such as, the Federation of Teachers, who manage large piles of money. And they say, hey, your stock is really volatile. And so there might be a secret ethics happening, but they can, there's also something I'm thinking about. So there's drama in investing world in terms of like ESG is illegal. Like that's like been brought to court in Texas, is that ESG should be an illegal strategy. You're not allowed to do so. Oh, and ESG, I don't think we said is it environmental and social governance is the ESG? Yes. But it's a common acronym in investing for ethical investing. Like, what is this? Letters we're throwing around. So, but it's a common shorthand for if someone's trying to do investing in, bunny quotes, in doing the ethics, they might care about the environment, they might care about social, and they might care about, governance. And so some court cases were brought up saying, like people suing to try and put this in the courts, which the courts are, somewhat known to be sympathetic to certain political ideologies, and saying, hey, I'm an employee of American Airlines, and American Airlines retirement fund invested in ESG funds without my consent. And that was not respecting my beliefs or something. And so that's where I think it's important as well to frame it not just values, but also long-term strategy. Like, I don't think it's a good long-term strategy to keep extracting just for, given if we as humans want to survive on this earth, continuing to use extractive technologies, extractive, minerals and these kinds of things, not the best long-term plan. So it can be very profitable in the short term. So, let's talk about from ethics, but also I want to frame it as just what's happening in the courts is just fighting it out as, no, this is straight business. And that,
definitely
straight business can be, you can find some secret ethics underneath there because trickles all the way down, someone's values are there, but that, trying to think of it as a strategy.
Well, and a strategy that kind of has come into play and is important, because until you have a counter strategy, like the strategy for most companies has been what gets us the best performance on our quarterly filings. Right? And is that our decisions are made with 3-month horizons. With a 3-month time horizon. And a 3-month time horizon is not very long. And also, like, if you try to run almost any business thinking only about how are you going to look 3 months from now, like, you look like a chicken with your head cut off. And so it's so funny, right? ESG, right? Like, the environmental piece is so obvious on a long-term basis that even like all these big oil companies are investing in renewables because at this point it's clear no matter what you can no longer run from it, right? It's not like the time horizon is 50 years, the time horizon is 20 years. And same thing with governance. Governance is like, what do we know? What does like science and research tell us about good governance practices? Like, how do you avoid groupthink? How do you avoid the hive mind? Well, you require some amount of push to make sure that you are having enough voices and perspectives at the table, right? Like, that's it. Don't let the same guy who's been sitting in the head chair sit there for 50 straight years, because sometimes you just need to have...
risk.
Right. It's a risk. And so like these policies come into play because it's like, well, we don't need to think about that right now because all we need to think about is the next 3 months. And it's like the next 3 months and also forever, right? Like, how do you balance out those two things?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some different policies in play. You can't play off the one playbook all the time, or you're missing, 3/4 of the situations you need to be thinking about. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see kind of these court cases, and I have been invited for some of my funds to say, hey, if we started voting our underlying stocks based on certain sets of beliefs and behaviors, which one would you like? And I can only assume, based on a great deal of pushback, they have added like profit maximization at all costs as a strategy, because people were concerned that prior to that, they were not voting for profit maximization at all costs.
It's so very profit maximization at all costs is so doomer.
I mean, truly.
So,
And it's like, if you have a mortgage on your house, like you're thinking about the long term, right? And if you're saving money for like your kids to go to school, you're thinking about the long term.
If you have kids.
Right. Why would you not want your investment strategy to also have a similar long-term view, right? Like, especially when you're talking about retirement accounts, where your time horizon for lots of people is, like 50 years, right? I still have 50 years in this human body that going to need money to get me through, right? It's not, if I maximize it all for next year, that's not a good strategy.
I do feel like this is very belief based and it's just theory, but I also really think that profit maximization just trends to crime. That's the best way to make a dollar. The fastest way to easiest way to make a dollar is to steal it from someone else. And that's that's the thing that we perhaps as a society, hear me out, we decide not to do, whether that dollar is by taking it out of their pocket, by tricking them, by, right, like selling them something for, much more than they can afford, putting them in a debt cycle. Like, at some point you're taking from people. That's the profit maximization is due crime.
And I mean, like, and let's get real, like lots of banks got court cases that proved exactly that, right? Yeah. Like, why don't we sell people products that we know they can't afford at exorbitant rates and do it as long as we can get away with it, right? And then it's like, actually, nope, that was illegal. And now we're going to make you pay for it. And also, you wrecked a whole lot of people's lives in the course of doing that. Like, that was not a victimless crime.
Right. That's, people's savings or,
their homes, like, truly. What is the disruption to a human life to being kicked out of your home?
That's ethics. What a concept.
Yeah.
Big stuff. So speaking of ethics, something we were talking in the pre-show, and you said a lot of cool stuff about politics, and I was like, oh, I want to ask you about politics so that you won't repeat the exact same thing. But I was thinking about, like, we also know each other from, some politics things and some shared interest in politics. And you shared some really, I thought, very helpful thoughts on navigating current existence in the United States.
I mean, current existence is like long-term existence, I think, in many ways. And obviously right now is a particularly acute time. But like, so I'm married. And when my husband and I got married, he was a non-voter, if you can believe that.
What?
Yes.
You?
And it took me 5 years to persuade him that it was worth voting. Right?
Wow.
Imagine you lived with me for 5 years and that's how long it took me. Because that made me realize just how much time and energy people put into the world to convince others that their actions have no meaning. And thus they shouldn't bother taking them. And if I were going to like sum up radical optimism in one thing, it's that your actions have meaning and that you can make change in this world, right? I got involved in with my PAC in 2017, and I think people hear PAC and they're like, "Oh, that sounds real bad." But it's just a group of people getting together.
Good things.
It can be good things, again, with the idea that you can make change with money, which clearly is one of the through lines in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I got involved with it because a friend thanked me after the 2016 election for everything I had done and that I was the most engaged person she knew. And I was like, well, if I'm setting the bar for literally anybody, that bar needs to come up, right? It needs to be higher. And I got involved my PAC is called Represent PA, and we get pro-choice Democratic women elected to the Pennsylvania state legislature. And I got involved, and basically all of the women in that group were not political by profession or background. It was just something that felt necessary for us. And I feel like almost 10 years in, I'm still doing it, I guess 8 years in. But the key is I don't do like 50 hours all at once and then that's it. And then I'm totally burnt out. It's like, what can you do in this world that you can keep showing up for? And that's true for everything. Like I take a lot of calls with women who are also like transitioning their lives, right? I've come to the end of one road. What should I do next? Or I've just started a business and I know I should be doing X, Y, and Z, but I really don't want to. And in many ways, like I give the same advice to everybody, which is do the thing that you can sustain your energy for doing, right? Like if what you feel like you're having trouble with is marketing your business, great. Make a list of 20 different kinds of marketing, and PS, person to person is still one of them. And then say, which of these can I do once a week, every week for the next 2 years, right? And don't pick the ones that you hate and that make you feel awful every time you do it, right? Like when you want to go meet people, don't go out there like thinking you're going to give them a 30-second elevator pitch. If what you like is having real deep conversations, great. Have one real deep conversation a week, right? Like I think there's a lot of like shoulding in this world. Like, oh, I should do this or I should do that. And we should other people and we should ourselves. And what I do doesn't have to be what you do. And what, I enjoy or what gives me energy doesn't have to be the things that you enjoy and give you energy. As anybody who has ever been engaged with a nonprofit knows, right? Sometimes you are asked to fundraise. And I always thought I was terrible at fundraising and I didn't like it. And I would still say those things today, even though I have raised many tens of thousands of dollars. And also fundraising isn't just getting up on stage and like running a live auction or asking people for $100,000. Sometimes it's just telling people what's going on and making them feel included and connected. I have somebody who I work with who thinks she doesn't do any fundraising at all. And she writes handwritten thank you notes to people. Like those things matter, right?
No, it's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference. And so like find the thing that you like enough to do. Find the thing that feels meaningful to you, right? And even if that thing is writing thank you notes and you think, oh, that's not really making a contribution, I can tell you 100% it definitely is. And if it's something that you enjoy enough that you will sit down and do one every day, that's incredible, right? The things you can sustain are the things that really matter.
Sustainability in all things.
Yeah. I have a bunch of houseplants and I regularly kill them because it's hard. Growing plants inside is a totally unnatural environment.
I appreciate you admitting that because I think of you as we also did talk a lot about gardening in the pre-show, but that you're a plant person and a garden person and that you still kill plants.
Because it's a totally unnatural environment, Pam. There's no rain. There's like sun is all weird and all over the place. Temperature is for humans, not for plants. And also like growing things outside is a totally different thing, because all I'm doing there is like tending my plant's natural desire to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know,
I
like
love that
inside
philosophy of it.
us.
Like it wants to, yeah, outside, it wants to grow. And it's, I mean, that's also a little bit permacultural of, you know, want to like have an environment and it's like not interfering. I forget the name of the original or what's often credited as the original permaculture book, but it was the farmer in Japan who let the fields flood and
Uh,
like the fields flood. Okay. Like
yeah.
the plants know what to do. And then, it's a do nothing farming. So that is,
Oh,
it's not the same as actually doing nothing, but it's the philosophy of do nothing of, you know, what minimal, guidance how are we in relationship to this living, organism
right.
versus controlling this living organism.
Yeah. And I think that's, gardening, I think gardening is one of the only hobbies that has proven to consistently make people happy. But I'm not going to say it's gardening outside, not gardening inside, although I know people who have tons of indoor plants and do great with it. But part of it is recognizing that it's not the right time for everything, right?
Mm.
That right now, before this call, I was out in my garden and I was basically just like sculpting bare branches. Right now is an ideal time to get into my plants and kind of say, which shoots do I want to encourage? I was training my rose bushes up some old garden furniture because I'm like, that's just a trellis that looks like a
Mm-hmm.
chair.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the right time for me to be putting in annuals. It's not the right time for me to be putting in my veggie bed. Right. And so,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that we all have a season, we all have a time, um, but figuring out what you can do and what you have the ability to do and the willingness to do and the capacity to do, and then doing that thing and not making yourself feel bad that you haven't like personally taken down a tyrant today. Like, we're going to do that all together, right?
That's we're seeing that news about the Federation of Teachers, or that whoever the institutional investor was. I've been finding some solace in thinking about and trying to cultivate faith, which I think is the appropriate word here, that people are doing, that there are plenty of good people, perhaps more than, like the haters might want us to believe. Because it's the other thing about and that people at every layer are, the opportunity arises for them to do the thing and they do it. And
Yep.
that I find very inspiring is that,
Yes.
oh, the institutional investors, like, this stock has been like
Up
nuts
and
for,
down.
yeah,
No good for
it's,
me.
well, and it's a reasonable business decision that happens to have some ethical art, possibly this person has a reputation apparently as an ethical person. How dare they? And so, but that they're, they're in a position to do what they can do and they're doing it. And so that faith is something that I'm having solace in, is that I can't do everything, but I can have some faith that other people are. Because something you said about the question one could ask, what's the motivation of someone who's trying to convince you that your vote doesn't matter, that your actions don't matter? What's motivating them to take the action of trying to convince you of that?
Yep.
Because them trying to convince you of that is an action itself.
Right.
So what's going on there? Or
Right.
what?
If truly my actions didn't matter, why would
Then
they
why
be
do you
spending
care
so
to tell
much
me?
energy, right,
Yeah,
trying to convince me of it?
let's
Right.
ask a question there. Yeah,
That's very suspicious.
yeah,
Yeah.
seems a little weird. That's
And consistently, I would say, like, one of the beautiful things about getting involved in almost anything is it reveals to you how much is already happening, right?
yes.
And the people I know who do the most in almost any space are the people who have the greatest amount of hope, because they know what today's strategy is and what tomorrow's strategy is, and like just keeps going, right? They're not, very rarely do you encounter someone where they say, truly, I don't know what the next thing to do is. And the last time that happened, I was helping someone prepare for a call on what is the impact of the Trump administration on immigration. And she's an immigration lawyer, and she was very worried. And she was like, I just don't know if I have anything to say. And then in the process of putting the call together, we had several other immigration activists. And she walked away from that call being like, oh, I'm hopeful again, because now I know how many more things there are to do, and that that immigration lawyers aren't the only people in this fight. There's this whole activist community that's in this fight that I just wasn't aware of before. Right?
Right. That there's all these angles and everyone in their lane is doing their thing. And like their opportunity will show up, and I'm like, I want to have trust and faith that they will show up.
That's right. And so like, I love connecting other people, because you meet one other person who is inspired, is energized, wants to do something with you. I said the other day, with just one partner, I think you can do almost anything, right? Just one person to tell you you're doing great. Like, let's keep going. Oh, you're feeling tired today. That's fine. I'll carry the bag. Like, just one person. It's amazing how far you can go.
Well, that was great. And so I think that's if anyone wants to follow you online, or is there anything you want to, point people at?
Yeah. I would say definitely I'm most active on LinkedIn these days. Like
LinkedIn, the surprise winning social network.
Because my professional avatar is the broadest in some ways of all of my avatars. Like on Instagram, it's just like my kids, and I only share it with people who I know personally. And if you're interested in any of women, money, power, or Philadelphia, you're going to find all kinds of cool stuff there. If you are a woman or woman identifying person or non-binary person, Invest for Better would love to have you in one of our circles. And if you're in Philadelphia, I would love to have you in one of mine, investforbetter.org/Philly. And just like get out there and do something. Also, if you are in Philadelphia again and you want to meet me, I'm going to do a walk during Philly Tech Week. It's very low key, just like show up. But
like a walk outside?
Like a walk outside, walking and talking is one of my favorite things. Like, it's just fun. And I feel like I always have great conversations on a walk. And so, yeah. And it was well received last year. So we're doing it again this year. But, the other thing is like, just join something, whether that's like a book club or a knitting group or a political organization or a nonprofit or whatever. People always ask me, like, how do I get more involved? And I said, truly, there is no organization in this world that just has so many people that they don't need your help. If you just drop an email
That's a great way to say it. That is like,
right?
They're not like, no, we're good.
We're full up. Right.
Yeah. There's always some way you can get involved in some angle.
And I have been involved in more organizations than I can count, where it's like the secret skill I bring to the table is a willingness to slog through the UI of any technical tool they're using or non-technical tool they're using because they're really bad, right? Like, you would be surprised how many organizations would just like your help exporting
need a little
data.
Bit of technical help, or making sure they have a website and not just on social media. That's a drum I beat often.
Right. Somebody asked me the other day, did I know WordPress? And I said, enough for anything you're doing with your website.
Accurate statements.
That's right.
You're not doing anything bespoke that someone who's been around the WordPress block can't handle.
Exactly. So. Oh, you want me to update all your colors? I can do that. That will take me 45 minutes. Right. There's lots of ways to get involved in kind of whatever your comfort zone is. And if you truly don't know, just ask them, like, do you need any help? Here are some things I'm good at.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining, Helen. So I'll mention all the socials that this podcast is on. So This podcast is on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube at Tech Cult Podcast. Please like and subscribe. Tell a friend if you enjoyed it. There is a Patreon if you are so inclined at /Tech Cult Podcast. And thanks for listening to Ignore All Previous Instructions. Until next time.
Thanks. Bye.